Now, this is the fourth film that you've made with Noah Baumbach. I know you had smaller roles in some of the earlier ones. I get the sense that when he writes a script, it's very specific, and he spends a lot of time on it. How much flexibility do you have when you go in to work on a film with him? Is there room for improvisation or to make suggestions, or how does it work?
Yeah, different. He just sets different boundaries. Some directors like it when you mess with the script or do something in the moment. For us, because it's so, especially this one, because we've talked it through ad nauseum so much before we've started, and it's so clear and lean when you get it from the beginning. Even when I first read it, there didn't seem to be a scene that was interchangeable or that the whole thing as a whole survived without it, which is always a good sign. And every scene felt like the stakes were high in the, which is rare. But he just sets boundaries similar to what theater is. With theater, if it's a well-written thing, this is what the script is, but intention is entirely flexible, and that happens. And I know this from theater. You do a play for 4 months and it's 8 shows a week and it adds up to like 120 whatever. But if it's with good writing, it opens up your imagination to different ways of doing it. Or maybe something happened before you go in the theater that makes makes something about what you're reading, that line made sense in a way that it didn't before, and he gives you the benefit of a lot of takes to keep exploring intention. So in that sense, it's completely freeing, and I find that that's helpful. Even the way we block it out, everything's meticulously, how does the action match what it is, the story that we're telling? And now that we have that, you're free to kind of explore what it means, and he'll give you something, or he'll put you in an environment that's so filled with detail that there's nothing to go inside to generate. It's all in front of you. It's in these incredible actors like Alda, or Ray Liotta or Scarlett, or it's in a set piece. It's a drawing that Eji has done, that is, placed on the couch, or it's the fact that the apartment's so sparse, or the, Ray Liotta's office, how corporate it feels. It's all in. He's very meticulous at everything. So you don't have to retreat in. You just have to not get in the way of the language.
And because you've done theater, I know one thing about this film is that we do come in at the end of this relationship. I mean, it's already fallen apart. We don't have that thing of like, what caused it? That is just a given. As an actor, how do you set that up for yourself? Particularly with Scarlett Johansson, your co-star. How did you guys prepare for that?
Well, again, most of it's all in the script, and then your scene partners hopefully are present when you're shooting it. But we did have a lot of the luxury of rehearsal, especially in bigger scenes. We rehearsed it similar as you would a play at some like windowless, overly lit room in a basement somewhere in LA, and we taped everything out on the floor, and we would experiment with the scenes and just reading it and walking it through. And then for bigger things, we would get on the set before we could with anything, no equipment or technology. We're just figuring out what makes the most sense, and it's just one camera. He's just pushing one camera everywhere. So to do things like longer scenes, like the fight, for example, he scheduled it so it would be 2 days. And whenever on the second day when we're at the latter part of the scene, we're like, okay, we'll just start from the very beginning. So every time we did that scene, we'd run it from the top. And I forgot what your question was.
You answered it.
It was more like, I guess it's in the script, it's in the actors, and it's in the ritual, or I guess in the repetition of doing it a lot. I guess that every time you do it, you become more economical, you become more open to another detail, as I said before, that you were closed off to before. And Noah's a great director, so he's giving you thoughts along the way that. He's an incredible audience member and a good actor. He's acting it kind of with you, not on the side. He's not acting on the side. That'd be strange or interesting. But he's very he's giving he's kind of rediscovering it based on when you have Laura Dern giving the speech that she does in a way that kind of teach you about what it's about, and then it becomes a conversation. Then it's maybe try this, and he's our best audience member in that. So it's a collection of a lot of things.
And I did want to ask you about that fight scene, because for me, that moment where you say, I forget the exact wording, but it's basically, some mornings I wake up and I wish you were dead. And it's one of those things that you say to a person, and you immediately realize you shouldn't have said it and you can't take it back. And what you do next, I mean, you sink to the floor as if you really want to sink through the floor. And we know, like, you're a tall guy. So one minute you're tall and the next minute you're so small. How do you do that?
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, to me, it's a mixture of stagecraft and just being so, like, completely in the moment. Was it in the script that you do that, or did it just sort of evolve?
No, it just kind of evolved into that. I think he wanted there to be a breakdown at the end, but I think it maybe was even just scripted as that he loses it or something. But we don't know what that is until we kind of get there. And then, even as we do it, again, because we're given the luxury of takes, and things are it's that great thing about acting. It's the conscious and the subconscious, and we've mapped out a lot of the conscious parts of it, of where to go and what it is we're saying, and then it's hopefully you're open to another idea or something that Scarlett says hits you in a different way that just happens, that you're not in control over, and an impulse makes sense, and you have an audience member, again, in Noah, who's trusting that makes sense for the story that we're telling, but that doesn't mean it's the right answer. That's just maybe this version. So let's try it again a different way, because we all know that there's no right way to play a scene. This is what we did on that day. That's what we were feeling on the day we shot it. Maybe if we did it now, I'd have a different, thought. But in that moment, that made sense, that I couldn't analyze it, nor did I, nor do I try to. I guess maybe there's something in what you're saying that I wasn't consciously thinking of it, but it's a dissolution of a relationship, a marriage. Maybe it makes sense that suddenly he would get physically small because it echoes how he feels. Even the blocking of it, he's avoiding confrontation, moving into different rooms until he has to address it. But again, I think that comes from a lot of other circumstances supporting, you, if that makes sense.
And for those of you who read the New Yorker profile that ran a few weeks ago, I know that you were born and you spent your early years in San Diego, and then your parents split up and you moved to the Midwest. Was there what about your personal experience as a kid whose parents' marriage broke up? How did that inform your experience of playing this role?
I don't know. I think in a lot of ways, but then I don't know that it's so different than anything else that I've done. Even you always bring your personal life to all of your roles. It just, this one, is maybe more relatable than, say, to something like Star Wars, where it's less obvious how you bring your personal things to it, but I don't work on it any different. It's the same thing. It's still, you have to break up into a million pieces and solve those things and not really worry about what it adds up to. But I don't think you necessarily had to have gone through a divorce or been a child of divorce to play that part, I don't think, but it definitely makes homework easier, where I was that exact age when my parents split up. So, and, you can't help but look at Eji and, project, things of, what your life were, compare it to the story and how they were same and how they were different. But then again, that doesn't necessarily means that it'll be better, because it's not my job to have a feeling about what I'm doing. It's to convey a feeling for the audience. So, I'm kind of avoiding your question in a way that I don't get so analytical about it. It just kind of comes up in the moment, and then I forget about it. But again, it's not I don't think anyone wants to watch someone have a bunch of feelings at them. It's to make sure that I don't get in the way of what the story is overall, and to I guess I'm saying the same thing. Having a feeling is nice. That I relate to it is good. It helps me feel like I've exhausted, every option when we're shooting it, but I don't think it's necessarily a prerequisite. So it affected me in ways that I didn't analyze, I guess.
And before I left the office, I solicited some questions from my office mates, and one of them said, "Did he really cut himself?" And I said, "Well, I don't think so, but you didn't, did you?" No, but it was very convincing.
Oh, good.
So I think that's why he has, because he knows that it's movie magic, but he really believed it. So are you ready to take a few questions from the audience?
I just realized I'm talking so fast because I was like in the car.
That's okay. No, don't
trying to get
worry.
here.
How about you in the front?
Hello.
Big fan of yours.
Oh, thank you.
My question is, what was your favorite scene to do, and which one was your hardest scene to do?
I'm going to repeat the question for you in the back who maybe didn't hear. What was your favorite scene to do, and what was the hardest?
That's hard to answer because again, and I don't mean to be evading but because the script was so good, every scene felt, usually like there's one or two scenes in a film where you're dreading, whether because they're emotionally challenging or physically, it's like you're running through fire. I've never had to do that, but I imagine that I would dread it if that was in a schedule. But because they were all so good, all of the scenes were so good, they all felt too early in the schedule. They're like, oh, this is Halloween now? We're doing this now. We're doing the cutting scene today. They all were both challenging and exciting, so it's hard for me to pick one. Even scenes that I thought were easy or seemingly easy in the schedule. So you're looking at Eji, then they take on a whole new meaning, So I don't have an answer of what ones were more or less fun. Halloween was fun because we're legitimately dodging traffic, so that's its own torture. I mean, the fight was really, it was fun to do, but it wasn't fun when we were doing it. It was just challenging. So, and again, that's also, I don't have an answer. I'm just making one up right now. Yeah, so sorry.
That's 99% of life and work.
What?
How about you?
You kind of alluded to this, but what were the challenges in shooting it out of sequence? And then I have another very important follow-up.
Everything is challenging about shooting it out of sequence, but then again, if the writing is good, you don't really you don't have to worry about doing the math so much because it's mostly there in the script. But things that are always challenging, that you kind of hope for, I've learned are never. They're actually usually the things that it just reminds you how much you don't need. That I think I need us to shoot in sequence because it'll give us a better result, I think is a mystery. We didn't do that, so I'll never know. But always when challenges come in the schedule that seem organic or anything that seems to not help you, on the set always seems to be the thing that helps you. We shot all the New York stuff at the end, which you would think that you would want to shoot it at the beginning. But there was also something kind of great about having gone through this whole LA stuff and then finally getting to the beginning of the relationship. In a way, it was a metaphor for the first thing that Noah and I talked about. He wanted to make a love story that started at the end. So, and then we kind of shot it that way. But I guess in sense-wise, you would think that would be at the beginning. So I guess that's my answer. Things that you think you need, you don't really need, and you kind of just got to go with it. I mean, even on set, there's nothing that helps you. There's nothing that's there. It's a weird job that way, that you're so beholden to this huge machine that the audience doesn't see, that you have to get it right the first time at a certain time. The race against the clock is, so it's kind of odd. But you kind of have to, I've learned to just embrace the things that on the surface seem like they would get in the way of it and just kind of roll with it a bit. What was the second?
Very important. Who decided that Henry was a Mets fan?
I think that's a Noah call. Yeah.
You in the front here?
Yes. Hi. Oh, congratulations on the nomination. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Have you always enjoyed singing? Or is
No.
this something? So you curated this voice for the film? Or was it
No, I think that's my voice.
It's a good one.
Oh, thanks. I don't enjoy singing in public. There's nothing about it that is fun or No, I'm kidding. I mean, if I had to sing a song, it's something that is uncomfortable to me. That is, but when you have to play a character and there's a story that's being told, it's way easier because it's less about the sound or him, the quality of it. You're trying to convey story. So I get lost in that part. If it was like, sing Moon River, then I wouldn't want to do that, just for the sake of this, a song. That scares me. But that's what it was. But the story being told then hopefully is for someone who's so much used to being in control and spends the first half of the movie, the character, on the back foot for the first time, where she kind of before the movie starts, it has made this decision and is spending the first half of the movie building herself up. He doesn't get time to process anything until he actually is performing someone else's, performing through another medium, which I thought was so interesting where Noah put it in the script. It's unexpected. It says so much about, well, she makes a reference in the scene with Laura that they met in performance, and performance is so much a theme in this movie. Performance in court, performance in, the first shot you see is Scarlett's face in performance. She went to a site-specific play where they met, and he was an actor in it, and she said he's a bear of an actor, but you never... but now it was the first time that he begins to mourn, I think, that not love being gone, but love transitioning into something else through a song that another character who's singing about how that they don't want love, but now for the first time they actually do. And I thought that was a really, it says so much about his character and what his value of the performing arts and what he thinks about art and that he's open to the world. He's open to being affected, but has to do it abstractly. Can't sit down and name it. It's only through expressing it in not a literal way does he begin to apply it to himself, which I thought was really beautiful. It's not Noah having a speech where I'm saying this, audience. This is my feeling. So when it's like that, you think about that and less about the quality of your voice.
Well, it was a good one.
Thank you. Thanks for that thing.
Anyone else? Where? I can't see. Whoever it is, just go.
Right there.
Oh, okay. Yes.
How are you attached to the project? How did that come to be? And what was your decision in picking that you wanted to be a part of this project?
Well, Noah and I are friends, so whenever we get together, it always goes into what do we want to do next, and that's kind of this. We had one of them was is there a musical version of Being Alive or of a Company that we talked about, and that didn't seem, we couldn't figure that out because it's a very abstract musical, and it seemed like it could maybe lend itself to something very cinematic, but we couldn't figure it out. So it's like a lot of conversations about different things, Stephen Shore, a photographer, or other films that we really like. Then over the course of it, we just narrowed it down to this thing. He'd been taking notes on this for a while, and then, after months and months of talking about it, this seemed to be the thing that we zeroed in on. Yep.
You and Mr. Johansson were a great team. You guys did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
You are supported. You're supported by an amazing support cast with Laura Dern and Ray Liotta and Alda. Who, in your opinion, from your perspective, had more fun with their characters?
Oh, that's hard for me to say. I mean, and also I haven't seen it, so I'm not sure what. No.
Generally, you don't like to
No.
just watch it. Okay.
Yeah. I try not to. I try to stay as far away from it as possible, except for Q&As. I don't know. Like working with it was all surreal. It's like kind of going from great actor to great actor. So it's hard for me to pick. There's moments in working with Laura that that I just love being an audience member as we're working. And same thing with Al and Alda. Everything you think that you assume about them as people based on their acting is right. You because they bring so much of themselves to it that you just assume that Laura Dern and Al and Alda are available and prepared and generous, and they are. So that was, same with Ray Liotta. He's so unpredictable, which is so exciting. So you don't really have to do much other than listen and watch. I don't think so. Again, you're making a good point that when you're surrounded by, you don't feel like you're working. You don't have to work as hard. So again, a non-answer, but.
That's a good answer. It's not a non-answer.
And how about working with the boy?
Yeah. What was it like working with him?
Yeah, how different was that?
Great, because again, I mean, some of the best actors I feel like, I mean, not to compare kids and animals, but there's no pretense. They're totally unpredictable, and they're so open. And that's rare. And he was one of those people who seems so mature. I always feel like you start movies with them and like, oh, I'm going to show you what it's like. And by the end of it, you're like, how was I, in that scene? How did you feel about, there's so much information in his face and, in the choices he makes, his physicality, again, we couldn't have asked for, it was so obvious, when I read with him, that he, had such a presence and an intelligence beyond his years that it was, again, similar to all these other actors, is such a gift.
You in the front?
Yeah, so I was just wondering, like, in your opinion, what were like the main differences between filming this, nonfiction movie and something like Star Wars with all the CGI stuff?
Just the pace of it, I would say. Something like Star Wars, there's 200 people when they say cut that descend and like, brush a leaf, or polish a boot. They're not polishing our boots, but there's so many technical. You're at war more with the technical elements of movie making, the camera and the lights and the background and things like that. Where things like this feel more like an intimate conversation where it just happens a little faster. But that being said, because it was JJ's version of Star Wars and because it was Ryan's version of Star Wars, that they make it feel like independent filming in that it's not different in the conversations you're having. It's not less specific. It's not less personal. You're still having all of those things. It's just the day is longer, and the schedule is longer. They still, break it up into these moments. So then you have to make sure that those moments are truthful and they make sense. And then you say them and then pass responsibility to them to make sure that the whole thing is, works. But so in that sense, they're the exact same. The process of where you still have to think about their physicality. You still have to where they're going, where they're coming from, all that stuff. It just takes longer to shoot. Yeah. So the pace of your day you have to manage differently. I'm giving you a really long answer. That you just have to figure out a way to keep. It's more of a marathon, I guess. Whereas these are more of a sprint.
So it's like more complex, where this is like a little more simpler.
No, they're still both complex, I guess. It's just the pace is a different muscle. It's not more or less gratifying. It's just a different way of working. Again, almost to what I was saying before. The things that you think you need. A big budget movie like Star Wars will pull you right out of it. If you think you need a lot of time to think about what it is, you can do that, and then you do the scene and it doesn't work. A light pops and it's over. Or you get something ready for 30 minutes and something falls and all that's gone. So you have to be there all the time. So you have to pick and choose, when you kind of take time to yourself and when you, because you don't want to exhaust yourself in a long shooting day. There's a million ways. There's not more or less complicated. It's just different. Same thing with acting and film and theater. It's just it's hard to compare. It's just a different muscle.
And what about, in a film like Star Wars, when you're playing opposite someone or something that isn't actually there? If there's something that has to be filled in later, through special effects, or did you have to?
I didn't have to do that often because they were really adamant about keeping the character of the movie in two people interacting with something, even if it's like I was going to say a puppet, but I don't know. I haven't had any scenes with that, but they keep it. You're interacting with something. You know, even when Andy Serkis was playing Snoke, he's there. You know, he's not. He's not some. So I've only had that experience really one time on The Force Awakens when he was a big hologram, and I was terrible at it because I kept following the voice and not looking at what I'm supposed to be looking at. So I really haven't had that experience very much. So I don't know.
Okay, good.
But imagine it's harder.
Oh my gosh. How about you? I think we have time for both.
Do you find yourself in the process earlier on given long amounts of concentrated time for your projects, or are you ever overlapping in your processes given your schedule and whatnot?
I feel like I'm perpetually overlapping, you know, with things that you have to get ready for before you start the next thing, and then while you're getting ready for, you have to be, you know, on the weekends going over stuff just because time, especially something with like the report. The report was made in such a fervor. Because we had no money or time, that we shot it, I think, in like 26 days or something like that. And even as we were shooting it, you know, things were changing. But I'm kind of used to that from school, so it's never bumped for me. You know, obviously you wish that you had a lot of time, but that's the way it is. So I have to kind of adjust. Even at school, I remember rehearsing plays, you know, or scenes in scene class in the morning, and then rehearsing a different play at night. So it was always kind of part of my education that you're multitasking. So yeah, there is a lot of that. Yeah.
Oh, well, we have one more here, and then I actually think we have time for two, depending on the length and complexity of the answers. So both of you will get a
I'll keep 'em
chance,
brief.
but no, don't worry.
Hi, we shared a huddle together in Black Klansman in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I was gonna say you look familiar to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but well, I guess I'm not wrong.
Merritt Weaver is so deadpan in her scene, and was it a struggle to play against her, or was it just
Who?
Merritt?
Merritt. Yeah. Was Merritt? No. I didn't read her as deadpan in that scene. She's working with her is, again, it's another example of an embarrassment of riches when it comes to actors that you're surrounded by. I think she's, you know, hilarious. So that there was nothing challenging about acting across Merritt Weaver.
Not breaking it didn't break your concentration, or you just went with whatever she was doing.
No. Yeah. No, it does nothing but give you information. You know, she's a great actor.
It's a good scene. And in the back, someone piped up with a question. Yeah.
The last couple scenes of the film seem to imply that despite the relationship not working, the love still persisted. I guess this is kind of a personal question, so feel free to not answer it. But has this film, or working on this film, affected the way that you view your relationship or past relationship?
I will skip that question, but I will say that that's right. You know, in that I think, well, right or wrong, that's what you pulled from it, which I pulled from it when I read it, is that, you know, that's the great and tragic thing about it, is hopefully as an audience member, you're constantly trying to, well, if you know, looking for the right amount of ingredients or the right combination of words that's going to solve this, because you can hopefully feel that there still is a lot of love there, and it's not love that goes away, it's something that transitions into something else. You know someone on such a molecular level, suddenly that's, you know, it's almost like your DNA changes, you know, and you have to figure out how to relate to that person in a different way, which is really, you know, hard. So I'm glad you pulled that from the movie.
Thank you so much, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's lovely.